Does this Labour government just need a massive reset in terms of a clean sweep and trying it out with someone else?
The problem is the faithfuls, as now loyal Labour MPs call themselves.
Do they actually call themselves that?
They do, the faithfuls. What is the narrative of this week? The narrative of this week is a shambles.
If I say to you now, can you say with confidence that Starmer will lead the Labour Party into the next general election campaign? I think your answer is... Financial advice from St James's Place sponsors Electoral Dysfunction. Hello and welcome to Electoral Dysfunction from Sky News with me, Beth Rigby.
Me, Ruth Davidson.
And me, Harriet Harman.
Hi. Is everyone okay? We're still hanging in there. Now, things we didn't have on our bingo card for this week. The BBC is without a Director General and a head of news, only two of the biggest jobs in that giant organisation. And Wes Streeting had to do the morning media round, insisting he was more Joe Marler than Jonathan Ross.
I think whoever's been briefing this has been watching too much Celebrity Traitors, and this is just about the worst attack on a faithful I've seen since Joe Marler was kicked out and banished in the final.
Now, this analogy went down very well with us Traitor fans. I didn't think that my love of Traitors on the telly box was going to be transformed into my daily life in Westminster.
Yeah, I just can't work out in the three protagonists in this story, the kind of Keir Starmer, Wes Streeting, and Morgan McSweeney, like who does that, like Alan Carr, Paloma Faith, Judas Kiss to like slaughter the other one, because it seems like almost at the end of Reservoir Dogs and they're all just pointing guns at each other.
This was a real proper electoral dysfunction moment this week like I have not seen in a while, where somehow there was apparently a leadership bid against Keir Starmer, where Streeting was named as the traitor. He's committed as a faithful. The Prime Minister had to apologise to him. He had to explain himself in the Commons. And the question is, will anyone from Downing Street get banished? Did you like what I did there?
Oh, I love it. You are such a pro. Anyway, the thing that I really want to know, Beth, and I know you can't tell us who gave the briefing, but there was clearly a concerted briefing. And it would be good for our listeners to know, like, why there's this piece of the jigsaw that's not there, because part of what's going on is the deniability from Keir Starmer because it's anonymous. And then also from Harriet, I want you to know from you, what on earth are big cheeses like you in the Labour Party thinking, and backbenchers? Because it's been a mad old week.
OK, you cannot say that this pod will not be content rich. Shall we get on with it?
The biggest story in town. I mean, I've never seen a Prime Minister use himself as a dead cat ahead of a budget before. Like, it was just self-immolation from Number 10. OK,
shall I try and just unpack this a bit? Ruth, will you give me a sign if I'm rolling on too long? Let me unpack it a bit. Look, the first thing to say is that there are very live rumours around Westminster about a possible plot to unseat Keir Starmer. It's been rumbling along for quite a while. You saw what happened at party conference with Andy Burnham, but the discussions are real. And what happened this week is, after Rachel Reeves signalled that she was going to raise taxes in the budget, MPs getting even more nervous. And there was beginning to spill out that there was increasing discussion about when might be a good time to move against Starmer. May has been long bookmarked as this possible moment of jeopardy for Keir Starmer, because if Labour do really badly in the Welsh, Scottish and local elections, is this the point where the party completely lose confidence in him and think we've got to change the leader? But then what began to emerge was discussions about whether or not post-budget there might be a call for Keir Starmer to go. So Number 10s and Keir Starmer's allies wanted to try and get ahead of this and try and, in a show of strength, if you like, try and just see this off, warn MPs that there would be an absolute bin fire if they tried to do it, that Keir Starmer would fight on, there would be a leadership contest, the markets would hate it, the party would be in disarray, things would get even worse, like terrible idea, don't do it, pipe down. I think there was an attempt by Number 10 to put it into the bloodstream. And what I mean was, because I had one of these briefings on Tuesday, that allies of the Prime Minister were just dripping this out to a few journalists just to be let it known that Keir Starmer would fight on. But what happened, which was curious on Tuesday night, is that the briefing that I had from someone then popped up on Patrick Maguire, who's a columnist at the Times, very plugged in with Labour. Then Pippa Creer, the great political editor of The Guardian, dropped something. And then Chris Mason of the BBC dropped something. So suddenly, what was, I think, an attempt just to put some information into the bloodstream of general discussion in Westminster became a massive news story. It then got even further amplified because in a couple of the briefings that a couple of the other journalists had, there was also quite stark attacks on Wes Streeting that these journalists had sourced, I think, to number 10 sources. And then that prompted Wes Streeting's team put on the record that he was not disloyal to the Prime Minister, that this was all untrue, and he was clearly furious about the briefings against him. So suddenly, all this attempt to try and damp down a potential leadership challenge after the budget spectacularly backfired. And the Prime Minister was then forced to come out at Prime Minister's questions, profess loyalty to Streeting, say that it wasn't acceptable, say he wasn't in charge of the briefings. Meanwhile, Wes Streeting is saying that whoever did it should be sacked.
I just keep going into this whole idea of what were they thinking? What were they doing?
There was quite a lot of discussion sort of within circles in Westminster about whether or not, you know, this was an attempt to try and out Wes Streeting and force him to come on the radio shows and the television channels to profess his loyalty to the Prime Minister, which he did.
Ish.
Streeting's team clearly knew that the Prime Minister was going to give a forthright defence and support of Streeting at PMQs, which he did. Prime Minister apologised to Streeting about the briefings.
Now, you and me have talked a lot, and actually, we need Harriet on this, don't we?
Who cares about what I think? I don't know what Harriet thinks.
We're like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and we've got Hamlet sitting here. Come on, Hamlet.
Come on, Hamlet.
Well, it is an absolute mess, but it's a mess of number 10's making. I mean, if you step back a bit to what seems like the calm and halcyon days of Monday, you know, the government is heading up to what is going to be a very, very difficult budget in actually where the NHS is going to be central. You know, it's going to be about jobs, it's going to be about the economy, and it's also going to be about the NHS. So that Rachel Reeves had already set that out. And with anxious MPs, they were getting MPs into Downing Street at 10 at a time, trying to discuss the difficult situation with them, trying to get better relations between number 10 and MPs, and to try and build that sense of team spirit and boost MPs' confidence so that together everybody could face out to the country and show that this is a government in difficult circumstances with getting on with the job. Switch to Tuesday, there's this absolute self-defeating attack. And, you know, if the intention was to strengthen Keir and weaken Wes, it has had exactly the opposite effect. It's weakened Keir, which nobody wants. People want to have a strong Prime Minister. People in the country want there to be a strong Prime Minister. People in the Labour Party want there to be a strong, successful Prime Minister. MPs, Labour MPs, have been really dismayed and asking themselves the question, what was this all about? What were they trying to do? That this is a self-inflicted wound. And the problem is the faithfuls, as now loyal Labour MPs call themselves, the faithfuls...
Do they actually call themselves that?
They do. The faithfuls. The faithfuls are losing faith at the moment because all they can see is unforced errors coming out of number 10. So I think it's been very bad. And also the golden rule is if you're going to start some sort of story running that is risky, you don't do it on a Tuesday, which is the day before Prime Minister's questions, which gave Kemi Badenoch an absolutely clear run. So I think the irony is that Wes Streeting was going to be doing a media round on Wednesday morning anyway, and they launch an attack on him at exactly that point. And the thing that you say, Beth, is that number 10 is saying, but we were being asked all the time, is there going to be a leadership challenge after May? That once this started running, I was waiting for them to close it down, for them to come out and say, this is not a briefing from Downing Street, so we're not saying anything about it because the Prime Minister's the Prime Minister and that's it. And we're backing the Health Secretary because he's doing a great job. But they didn't. They just let it run and get worse and worse and worse until we're in the situation we are today.
So when I sort of explained to you kind of how it could have come about and then got out of control, does that tally with what you've picked up, or does that make sense to you?
Well, either they intended it and it went incredibly badly wrong, and it was wrong in principle to do that. The Prime Minister should never be a destabilising force and should never be disloyal to cabinet ministers, or they failed once the story had started running to get on it and say this is not a number 10 story and to kill the story. So number 10 failed either way because they promoted a story that they shouldn't have been, or they failed to stop a story. Because if number 10 had come out all guns blazing and said, this is rubbish, guys, ignore it, I don't know where you've got this from, but it's nothing to do with us. It's, 2 and 2 being put together and making 15. People would have dropped it, but they didn't. If it was intended, it's had the opposite effect than what they were trying to do, which is build morale and build support in the Parliamentary Labour Party. And if it wasn't intended, why didn't they shut it down right away?
The budget's coming up, and if you're already wondering what it'll mean for you, your family and your future, you're not going to be alone. It'll be a big moment with speculation rife about what the Chancellor might do, especially around tax. If you're feeling like you may need some help to understand its implications, then St James's Place has a national community of advisors that offer one-to-one financial advice. Whatever's announced at the dispatch box in the House of Commons, a St James's Place financial advisor can talk you through what it means for you and will help you plan for the future, empowering you to make confident choices around your family finances. Visit sjp.co.uk to find your one-to-one financial advisor. St James's Place representatives represent only St James's Place Wealth Management plc, which is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. SJP approved 21st of October 2025.
Harriet, let me ask you a question, because I know you've talked before about not being a massive fan of just some of the laddish culture that surrounds Keir Starmer. Now, he's not necessarily laddish himself. Do you think this is a bit of a sort of culture of that?
I don't think the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, comes from a sort of laddish culture. And the whole briefing situation, briefing wars that there is in politics, his whole professional working life would have been a million miles away from that. When you're a lawyer, when you're the Director of Public Prosecutions. So he would be completely unfamiliar with that sort of culture, and it would be anathema to him. But actually, number 10, certainly when, I don't know so much, you'll know more about Conservative governments, but certainly when they've been Labour Prime Minister, have always had briefing against people. And that happened under Tony Blair's government, it happened under Gordon Brown's government, and I think it's absolutely deplorable. I've been a victim of briefing under Tony Blair's regime, and I was a victim of briefing under Gordon Brown's regime, but never have I seen such a spectacular own goal in the briefing. I don't want there to be briefing anyway. I don't want briefing to be successful, but my goodness me, this was an unsuccessful one. I know people will think this is all very technical and everything and very inside of the Westminster thing, but I think if there is a challenge after May, I think what has happened this week makes a challenge more likely. And I think that Keir Starmer might well be looking back on this week and thinking that was the thing that pulled the plug.
The problem of all of this is it's a Prime Minister that looks like he doesn't have a grip of his operation. They're not managing to tell the story of the government. They're constantly besieged by crises and self-inflicted wounds. And then MPs are now looking at it thinking, is Keir Starmer the right person to lead us into another general election campaign? And if I say to you now, can you say with confidence that Starmer will lead the Labour Party into the next general election campaign? I think your answer is...
I still think it's more likely than not that he will. What is the narrative of this week? The narrative of this week is a shambles. That is the story that Number 10 have been telling about itself and about the government. And that's why MPs are so dismayed. But I think they still want the government to succeed. They still want Keir Starmer to succeed. But Yeah, he has got to pull his finger out.
I think this is going to be a chastening weekend for people door knocking, because you're talking about how dismayed MPs are. But I think in terms of punters, voters that are out there are looking at this. They're thinking to themselves, bloody hell, like Labour had 14 years to rebuild. Keir Starmer had 4 years in opposition to write himself a programme for government and build a team to deliver it. And he's utterly falling apart. I mean, Harriet, you cannot believe that you guys would have got this shit this early. It took the Tories years to become this shit. I mean, we got there and then some. I like putting in Scottish words. You know, we talked about scone droppers. This is a total cluster burach, which just means an absolute disaster on several different fronts, isn't it?
Well, usually this is what you'd expect to see 16 months before the end of a government. But here we're only 16 months into the government. But, you know, there is still time. We aren't even yet anywhere near May and the next elections. We're nowhere near the next general election. They have got time to get their act together. There is not political division that they've got to overcome. It's just an HR problem.
Oh, it's not an HR problem. It's so much more than that now.
I have to say, I've done this job for a long time. And for me, in the recent days have felt a bit like the end of days. And the reason I say that is it just seems like problem... Oh, God, sorry.
Saved by the bell.
That was actually a contact, which I now can't pick up, but it would have been good if I could. But we definitely can't pick up that phone call in here. Just to go back, it has felt in recent days like the end of days, in that it just seems like whatever happens, things are going wrong. And this whole saga around possible coups and trying to shore up Keir Starmer only to leave him looking weaker and more wounded, questions about, you know, his closest confidant and whether he can survive, whether or not Wes Streeting will go in for the kill. It feels like... can they actually get a grip now, or actually does this Labour government just need a massive reset in terms of a clean sweep and trying it out with someone else? And I think that's the issue, isn't it? That more people are beginning to... more people who are loyal. I mean, someone said to me that the MPs divide into the kind of irreconcilables, the ultimate loyalists and the concerned middle. And the problem they've got is if the concerned middle, who are instinctively, as you say, Harriet, loyal, if they start to think, hang on a minute, this is not going to work, and begin to move into a different grouping, there is a sort of massive vulnerability for the PM there.
I mean, it remains the fact that it is such a bad option to chuck out your leader. You know, people have voted. They've voted for a party led by Keir Starmer to form the government. He's got a big majority. And one of our big criticisms of the last government is how could investors, how could the public, how could business, how could anybody have confidence in a government if they had no confidence in themselves, because they kept chucking out their leaders one after the other for various mishaps. So the idea of having political stability as a foundation for economic stability was a key part of Labour's message in the general election. And there is that kind of golden link between the vote, the manifesto, and the leader. And once you disrupt that, you know, you've really fallen into a pit of instability. The dangerous moment is May, after the council elections, mayoral elections, Scottish and Welsh parliamentary elections.
I take exactly what you're saying about political stability feeding into the markets. But you come back to the ultimate question is, what if the Prime Minister is a dud? It might actually be that you've got somebody at the top of the tree that cannot tell the Labour Party story and cannot rule. We don't know that yet, but you know, the indicators are not looking good for him. And what's really ironic about this week is that, you know, Starmer's team tried to shore him up and have made him weaker. They tried to cut Wes Streeting off at the knees. He's come out stronger.
Yeah, Ruth, I think you're exactly right, because what happened in the sort of storm of all of this is Wes Streeting kind of emerges onto the breakfast round. Everyone in Westminster is like, how's he going to handle this? Bloody hell, this is box office telly. Well, if you like politics, but also if you like
telly for nerds.
Yeah, for
completely.
nerds. And also there is a sort of traitors, you know, if you want to draw that analogy. He handled it very well. He professed his loyalty. He took direct aim at Downing Street. And he emerged from this looking honourable. And as one MP messaged me afterwards, they said, I'd say Wes is so far the winner today, dearie me. And then they also said it may now cause the Prime Minister to sack someone in number 10. The parliamentary party is furious at them. This is how to not make friends and influence people. I guess the question is, Harriet, do you think that Wes is going to follow through with this and press it? Because he's in a position of power on this. If he goes for it, number 10 are on the back foot here, aren't they?
So they've launched an inquiry so that Keir Starmer can have all the facts and decide what action to take on what clearly has been recognised as, a major own goal and very wrong. Wes Streeting has called for the person who's initiated this or presided over this in number 10 to be sacked. But the question is, after the inquiry and after the dust has settled, whether he's going to pursue that point or whether he's going to let it drop and just leave Keir Starmer to decide what to do. And certainly it seems that he's going to let it drop on the basis that he doesn't want to contribute to political drama. He is within his rights for demand a head should roll, because what has been done is unprofessional and it's also a breach of the ministerial code. Sorry to be nerdy here, but there is a ministerial code that binds everybody in Downing Street. And one of the things is they are not to brief against cabinet ministers. So there might well have been a ministerial code breach here. But it sounds like Wes Streeting is not wanting to pursue this because he regrets there was a drama in the first place and he doesn't want to prolong it.
I should say also the name of Morgan McSweeney, who we've talked about, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. Lots of MPs... He was
mentioned in Prime Minister's questions.
He was mentioned in Prime Minister's questions. Lots of MPs are saying that Morgan McSweeney has to resign. Just to make it clear, Morgan McSweeney has categorically denied that he made these briefings against Wes Streeting. So I just need to put that out there because there's been a lot said about him. And when you're the Chief of Staff, it is tricky, isn't it? Because you can't come on to podcasts, etc., and publicly defend yourself or put your case forward. But that's what I understand. He's categorically denied it. So look, we've gone in and out of the treachery, the plotting, the accusations, who might be banished from the castle, who's a faithful, who might be a traitor. It's still all a little bit unknown as this all unfolds as a drama that Keir Starmer really did not need. But there is a bigger question here now, isn't there, about Keir Starmer and his ability to lead the party and keep the confidence of his MPs and get through the budget and the May elections and carry on and lead the party into that second term. And I just want to say just about this budget plot, the idea of the nervousness about MPs all losing their minds after the budget. As I understand it at the moment, is that they are potentially going to break the manifesto pledge, but they're going to try and protect working people from those tax rises. And the current way they're thinking of doing that is that you lift income tax by 2p, but only for the higher rate. And the reason that matters, and Ruth, we went through all these rates the other week, is because you only pay the higher rate if you earn over £50,000 a year or more. So if you raise the rate for everyone, but you cut national insurance for those that are earning under £50,000 a year, you protect them from the income tax rise. You therefore can, as the Prime Minister, say, I've protected working people from the worst of my tax rises. That's what I said I would do. And then what they do is they lift the child benefit cap, or at least taper it. I think they might lift it. Let's see what happens. And that way, they give Labour MPs something on the doorstep to say, yes, we've had to break a manifesto pledge, but we've tried to protect working people. I know it's a stretch because they're basically breaking their pledge.
It's very difficult to do things in a way which is complicated and involves many moving parts of a story, not least because there's a time before the tax rates come into effect where people will have all the fears of what's going to be the outcome on their household budget, but they won't have had the reality. So they will hear the fears of the tax rate on income tax going up, but they won't feel the benefit of the national insurance cuts. And it will be undoubtedly a breach of the bit of the manifesto which says don't put up income tax rates. So I just feel fearful about that.
You're going to get slaughtered, Harriet. If you raise income tax after having a manifesto pledge not to do it, even if it's just the top band, brackets, doesn't apply to Scotland, close brackets, even if it's just XY, even if it's mitigated by national, it doesn't matter. You will get slaughtered. And you won't just get slaughtered after this budget. You will get slaughtered at the next 4 or 5 elections because you cannot trust Labour on tax. That will be the line. You cannot trust Labour on tax. It is enough to bring down a Prime Minister and a Chancellor. And I wonder who might be waiting in the wings should a Prime Minister fall. Who's got the ambition, do we reckon, Beth? Because you were asking some people at conference, 4 or 5 weeks ago?
I sure was. Shall we play that Wes Streeting clip? You do want the top job one day, don't you?
Oh, get lost. It's just, this is like, I find this, anyway, it's just such a redundant, irrelevant question where a year into a Labour government, where Keir won a thumping majority that literally no one thought was possible when he won the leadership of the Labour Party.
But I'm not saying now, I'm saying... you in 2023 you said you'd die happy if you got to be the Labour leader.
I think it's really disrespectful to a Prime Minister that has done a whole series of things that everyone, myself included, thought was impossible. Like, he won the Labour leadership. People didn't think he would necessarily do that at a time when the Corbyn project had been riding high. He changed our party when no one thought it was possible. He won a general election, which no one said was possible. And now he's in a position where people are saying, well, he can't change this country and he can't win the next election. He's confounded his critics before. He will confound his critics again.
Such a perfect answer.
So good, isn't he?
Smooth operator, as the song goes.
Oh, get lost, Beth.
But you can't win with that sort of question, because if you say you don't want to be Prime Minister, everybody thinks you're not authentic and you're lying. If you say you want to be Prime Minister because that's truthful, everybody says you're trying to bring the government down. So there's no answer, but the best answer was the one that he gave.
I just love the fact he told me to get lost. It really amused me. It really tickled me. I was like, oh, that is such a great answer, because you've kind of disarmed it. If you take it seriously, you'll kind of tie yourself in knots. If you take the piss a bit and tell me to shut up or whatever, you kind of just take the heat out of the question, even though the question was spot on. And he definitely does want it.
The idea that he's not been playing fantasy cabinet in his bathtub for, a decade or longer is nonsense.
OK, well, look, we have thoroughly kicked the tyres on that. There is quite a lot of time in political life from November through to May. But yeah, some of the fundamentals have to shift in terms of the polling, the sense of delivery from this government, the sense of confidence and getting on a front foot for him to be able to feel secure going into the local elections. So, the stakes are really high. And I didn't think I would be saying that 17 months into a Labour government that had a near record majority. Financial advice from St James's Place sponsors Electoral Dysfunction.